that's the thing where AI becomes really interesting is you can prove anything you want in the math, but you also have to recognize the kind of bias either that's in the data or the bias of the person who's actually doing the work with the data itself. Like, do they lack cultural context, or is there academic bias? Like, what kind of things are they bringing into it that might be influencing a model?
It almost seems like there will have to be some sort of governing body of intellectuals to make informed decisions around this kind of stuff, because it's going to get the problem is going to get more complex as the technology improves, which I mean, the example I always return to, which I find interesting, is, you look at 1980s, the development of video games and the Atari. So you have one joystick, one red button, one very low resolution screen. And between a 44-year period, you have basically full immersion, virtual reality, augmented reality experiences that people are going through that produce real neurological reactions. Dopamine can actually be released through something that is, by a previous definition, not real. It's not actually happening in your immediate environment. It's happening in the creation of an environment, and that's a 44-year period. That is not. It's not even a grain of sand in the beaches of time. It is nothing, and that is such a leap. Now, assume a very, very low rate of progression, near nothing, and just push the timeline out. What's 300 years like? What's 500 years like?
Yeah.
And the amount of integration from person to person within our life, given, our Apple Watches, our iPhones, our computers, like it won't be undone, I guess is what I'm getting at. So how are we going to learn to live with it and then live with it intelligently so that we can make informed choices about our integration with artificial intelligence? I don't even think that's a question. But
I think it's an interesting
wild
topic to explore. I think one thing is, what do they say? That the time between, I want to say like the 40s and now, we've progressed more than we have from like any other time in history, right? So like the printing press to Columbus and all these kinds of, everything, the timeline is compressed, and the rate of innovation and technology is skyrocketing. And I think that, what we're in right now is, you and I bring our childhood experiences. Like when I was a kid, you'd call somebody's house when you want to see if you can get together and play, or you'd knock on a door, right? Now my kids are texting on an iPad, their friends, and if the friend doesn't have an iPad or a text, then they're not keeping those connections. Like, let's go knock on the door. Who does that? I did, right? Yeah. So I think what's happening is you and I are bringing context of a different experience set. Right. So when we see people that's like, the classic example, years ago, one of my first consulting projects, I did it for a telephone company, a big telecom. And, people were like a cube next to each other. And this is before IM was prolific. They're messaging the person one cube over of how they would engage. It's like versus step over the wall and say, hey, I got a question for you. But as a telephone company, they were used to using technology to engage anyways, and it was just a natural thing. But it's like we're seeing these things start to build up, and people aren't, kind of going beyond it. And you and I kind of say, well, get up, walk around. These things make complete sense, but technology is filling some of that role. I think to one degree, it's like it's happening quickly, and we bring that historical context. I think the other thing too is, we can use COVID as an example. Anyone with a kid during COVID in this last cycle saw their kids take to these technologies, and parents are scared now.
Right.
But that's the world these kids are living in, right? So, for example, like these my daughters, if they can't find a friend that they can text with, then, it doesn't occur to them the other options or avenues to engage.
Interesting.
Because that's the community that they're building.
Right.